It's times like these it helps to recall that there's always been times like these. Paul Harvey.
Dollars very quickly from point A to point B. But if you're making payment to someone who wants to be paid in euros or won or whatever, then you still have to go through the currency conversion process. And as best I can tell, CBDCs do not deal with that issue at all. So you're still going to have, particularly for international transactions, you're still going to have the currency conversion issue.
There'll still be an exchange rate. That's clear, and the exchange rate will move.
There's a lot of talk about central bank digital currencies, but not enough talk about currency conversion. The BIS Innovation Hub has created clunky models for bilateral swaps, but what about unilateral swaps? If every nation in the world had bilateral swaps with every other nation in the world, they are reinventing complexity, and the interoperability issue worsens. It might not be an issue if everyone uses the same technology, however, that's already not true. China's central bank digital currency uses a completely different tech than the Bahamian sand dollar. The more central bank digital currencies surface, the more problems arise, and that's where XRP and Ripplenet shines.
The problem statement. The problem statement is that cross-border transfers are costly and time-consuming. So according to the World Bank, the transaction processing fee for a cross-border funds transfer can average up to 7%. Also, it can take several days. But very, very importantly, the number of correspondent banks are retreating. In here, you can see the research that was issued by the BIS. I would note that there's also research before that by the WEF, as well as by the IMF. And all of them are showing that there is a decrease in the correspondent banking connections. Now, this is normally associated by something that is called de-risking. And de-risking in the world of compliance means I find it too risky, so let's not do it because we're going to risk too big fines and it's not worth our core operation. So what that means is that increasingly across the world, countries are actually financially excluded. And I'm not talking individual financial exclusion. I'm talking here country financial exclusion. For those countries, it's actually very hard to get transfers to work properly. And the number of intermediaries in the process, of course, then can take higher fees. And I would note up front that I'm not talking about countries that are within the sanction system, sanctioned countries. I'm talking about countries that are not sanctioned and that are no longer served by correspondent banks, are less well served by correspondent banks than they were in the past as a result of this de-risking exercise. So
there is a massive problem. To settle transactions in the legacy system, you need correspondent banking. The cost of correspondent banking is increasing and the banks are backing out of those relationships. There's only a handful of large banks that have the correspondent banking relationships, and if they're starting to back out, there simply won't be a way to move money to these nations. Ripplenet will have a way to move money to these illiquid corridors using XRP.
Sure. I mean, to the extent that the Fed is permitted, or any central bank is permitted to do more experiments, and they are basically experiments because a lot of this is untrod ground on human beings without there's an old joke, and it says, like, what's the difference between biologists and economists? And the answer is that biologists at least have the decency to test on mice and rats first. So I think that the extent to which we allow ourselves to be tested on, and again, not a conspiracy. I've met many Fed officials; they're very smart people, but they are engaged in an unenviable endeavor, which is trying to predict the way the economy will grow and the way people's behaviors will change, all that sort of thing. So to the extent that we allow that sort of thing to take place, of course, there's going to have an impact on the economy and on growth, on efficiency, our production capacity, and all that, all of which has implications for taxation and for the strength of the dollar and ultimately for our national security.
The central banks are testing monetary theory. History and common sense tells us deficit spending beyond our means, is a recipe for disaster. However, central banks use Keynesian models to justify money creation. But even Keynesian economists think that inflation should be at 2%. Last CPI number was over 5%. Experimenting with monetary policy, even though it was proven not to work. We are at a fundamental shift. The system is going to end in disaster, and crypto assets will be the last resort of a system on the brink of total demise. Crypto networks can increase GDP and counteract some of the problems that the central planners have created.
Q&A that I've been reading as we've been going along and is asked often, sort of why do we need this and what problems will it solve? And I think those are great academic questions. I suppose similar questions were asked in the 1990s and the 2000s as the internet weaved its magic across the globe and transformed everything that we know about retail, about transportation, about communications, about photography, about recording music. We probably asked those same questions. The fact of the matter is there's not a lot of optionality here, guys. This is a technological transformation as big as the early phase of the internet. It's completely naive to think that the internet is not going to do to things of value, especially money, the same thing it's done to photography. Nobody uses Kodak anymore. It's gone. That it did to retail, Sears is gone. Amazon's replaced it. A generation that's used to sending a photograph around the world in a second is not going to wait 3 days to cash a check and to move money. It's still faster if you got to get $10,000 from New York to London to stuff it in a suitcase and get on an airplane. That doesn't make any sense. The financial system we have today is going to be fundamentally transformed by this technology and along with it money. And it's not just CBDC. What China's building is much more than a digital yuan. They're building the first fully networked economic system, all under central bank control, where every transaction will be fully networked, fully digital, fully in a network, a financial network, every transaction, that currency. And it's not just authoritarian systems. The Europeans are hell-bent on doing this. This is moving very, very, very fast, and it's only going to get faster, this transformation. So to me, the only optionality is not, do we want it? Can we have it? We're not going to stop it. The only question is, does society stand up in a democratic society and demand that democratic values be ingrained into the technology? Do we demand the economic privacy that we have in physical token money be in digital token money? Do we demand that we have full economic, not only privacy, but control, and that governments can't use digital money to prevent us from using the money to buy the things we want, to support the causes we want, to express our individuality in the way we want to? So again, I'm being somewhat deliberately provocative, but I don't think we have the option of stopping this. I think what we've got to do is, as society, make sure the values that got us here, quite frankly, that have led the world, the aspirational democratic values of free enterprise, of the rule of law, of economic privacy, are ingrained in this new innovation that's going to wipe away existing systems faster than, 10 years from now. The financial world is going to look very different than it does today. And the financial institutions that survive are going to be the ones that adopt this technology. The ones that are going to be gone are the ones that try to fight it.
This blockchain movement is moving very fast. There is no stopping this. The benefits will persevere and money will update. Crypto networks that offer solutions to real problems will triumph in this age.
When CBDCs are set up, I think the innovation will happen on top of them in ways that will just continue to make our systems better. So with that,
central bank digital currencies will allow the central banks to kick the can down the road by enabling deep negative interest rates. CBDC is a way for the system to continue to run even with the flaws of the system. CBDC is not an end-all solution, and your favorite crypto with a real use case will interact and work alongside of CBDC, ultimately driving traffic or fiat money to the crypto asset networks that offer value.
Which brings me at last to Bitcoin. If a reasonable expectation of financial privacy is not reliably encoded into digital money, public or private, Bitcoin and similarly decentralized forms of crypto will continue to thrive and succeed. And it will not just be for illicit use, but for use by ordinary citizens who simply and rightfully want their financial affairs to remain private and have lost faith in governing institutions to make it so.
The government will do their best to force everyone into dollars or Fed coins. They will add complicated taxes and regulations to deter people from investing in crypto. Taxes are demand for dollars. You need dollars to pay taxes. They want you in a depreciating asset, but just remember, these CBDC networks will work with crypto networks.
A little bit, but not too much. A lot of things that you'll hear people worry about is that CBDCs will become like a tool of oppression, that like the man is going to embrace the technology in some sort of a shallow way, that actually increases like oppression and control. I'm both worried and not worried about that in slightly different ways. I'm not worried about it in the sense that I don't get worried when I see people like moving on CBDCs or something, but I am worried about it in the sense that although to some extent I think the technology inherently pushes against that, the walls just hurt you, right? When you build an internet with walls, like China discovered this, you build an internet with walls, you try to build your own domestic internet or something, the walls just hurt you, and eventually you realize, God, this is just stupid, and you take the walls down. Like, if you look at what the internet has done, I can move information across, international boundaries super easy. And there's a lot of people who would say that that's bad, like espionage and, attacks on infrastructure. And they've just like had to accept the fact that, oh, well, like in this world, because of the tremendous benefits that we get out of the internet, people can move information in the internet. We can't search information at the border anymore. We once could do that, and now we can't. Modern technology has eliminated that choke point, and regulators adapt. I mean, regulators have legitimate things that they want to prevent people to do. We don't want people like attacking our electricity infrastructure or people using malware to blackmail people and demand money from them or whatever. Like there are legitimate regulatory concerns, and regulators find ways to deal with those legitimate concerns in a freer, more open world. And I think inherently it's going to move in that direction. I think we do have to be vigilant, but we shouldn't be paranoid.
I disagree with David. We should be paranoid. Take a good look at what they've done to our money. Take a good look at what big tech has done with our data. The Internet of Value is going to have walls, and this is where public ledgers come into play. Use an open blockchain like XRP to transfer value from one walled garden to the next.
I do want to make one other point about CBDCs, which is people ask me, like, well, why would they use blockchain technology? Like, well, why would a central bank want to use a blockchain? Why wouldn't they just use a central database or conventional technologies? And the answer is, believe it or not, the way existing enterprise financial systems work, they provide their security by limiting who can access them, because they rely on a secure boundary. And so every endpoint is like an additional vulnerability. They rely on edge security to protect systems. If you want to connect to Swift, or if you want to connect to Fedwire, there's certain requirements you have to make. Like, you have to do penetration testing. You have to have a response team. And like, if you're going to open it up to everyone, the rule can't be that you have to have a response team. You have to meet cybersecurity and penetration testing. Anybody who wants to could connect to Bitcoin, Ethereum, or XRP, submit transactions, monitor the ledger for years and years and years now. These systems are not secure because their edges are secure. They're secure because they're structurally secure. And we can build systems that are structurally secure, which will enable us to eliminate that sort of, the way, what happens if someone like abuses Swift? Like, regulators come down on them. If someone abuses, the Fed system, regulators come down and say, hey, you need to fix this. Like, and we have regulatory capital. We're going to put you out of business. You have funds on deposit. We have control. We have a throat to choke. Like, if your security model is that you have a throat to choke, that's very unscalable. Right? You can't go around the world, policing people who use your system. Bitcoin, the beauty of blockchain systems is they don't have to do that. They don't rely on endpoint security or being able to pressure the endpoints to keep the system secure. They're secure by design in ways that no previous systems really ever were. Blockchains handle billions of dollars of value every day in a completely hostile environment. They have no central secure data store. They have no administrators or administrative functions, and their reliability exceeds the most carefully curated private systems. That's world changing. That's huge.
Yeah, I mean,
Distributed systems are the solutions to the cyber attacks we are seeing. The system is fundamentally going to change, and the infrastructure will be built on technologies that can easily interact with our favorite crypto asset networks. It's just a few seasons ago, politicians baiting their hooks with free barbecue and trading a Ponzi promise for votes began telling us we don't want opportunity anymore, we want security. We don't want opportunity, they said, we want security. And they said it so often we came to believe them. We wanted security and they gave us chains, and we were secure. Suddenly, with our constitutional guarantees depleted, with our national character eroding away, with our tax laws penalizing those who dare to prosper, with workers concentrating on how little they can get by with instead of how much they can produce. Suddenly, we looked overhead one day to discover that the first to the moon in space was a Russian accomplishment, that free men dragging their feet had outdistanced by slave workers dragging their chains. And we were sore afraid. Perhaps this was a disguised blessing too. Thank you for liking, watching, and subscribing. If you enjoy my work and wish to support my channel, please consider joining my Patreon. Remember to hit the bell.